Scott, you're muted still. Monday morning start.
As I was saying, it's Monday. And I feel like I need more coffee to match the energy that was in that sizzle reel. It was pretty cool, though.
It had a little bit of a spooky vibe to it. I liked it.
I know, like some Matrix vibes too.
It did. Anyways, moving to something that's more on topic, we want to welcome all of our viewers. You are watching the on.net live show. If you're tuning in for the very first time, what are we here to do? Our mission here on this show is to empower all of you, our .net community members, to achieve more. We do that by showcasing community members like our guest today, Marcel. But before we toss it over to Marcel, let me just introduce the host for the show. I'm your very familiar host, Scott Eddy, and I'm joined by co-hosts Myra Wenzel and Katie Savage. But I'd like to welcome today's guest, as I was saying, Marcel Medina. Marcel, would you like to briefly introduce yourself to the viewers?
Yeah, good morning. My name is Marcel Medina. I'm a software developer here in New Zealand, Auckland based. And yeah, I'm just been doing .NET for some time, and I had like pretty cool demo to share. And then I decided, why not? Why not you come and share with you guys? So that's me. I have like this, I'm going to be talking about this, the REPR pattern and exploring with FastEndpoints. And I guess it's going to be interesting to go and deep dive onto those demos.
All right, that sounds exciting. So it's an API design topic. I know you have a slide deck. Why don't we just jump right into that?
Sounds good. Yeah, so we're going to be exploring API design with the REPR pattern and FastEndpoints and how we can simplify our API design. Just introduce myself. So as I said, Marcel Medina. I'm a software developer and Azure specialist. I've been doing a lot of things, and one of the fun things I like doing in my free time, exploring playgrounds with my kids. So, I have like my technical blog. It's tech.playgokids.com. I'm currently working as an app innovation consultant at Arinco here in New Zealand. I'm a Microsoft MVP. This is my QR code if you want to keep in touch with me. So feel free to ping me and we can just discuss from here if you are interested in exploring more about what I'm doing. The agenda is simple. We're going to have basically exploring the REPR pattern and going to examples. I have 10 of them. And I don't have slides. This is just like an introduction, basically. It's just going like straight away, right? What's the REPR pattern, right? Like by the definition that we see like this one, it's like the request response pattern that defines how the APIs endpoints, they have like those three components: the request, the endpoint, and the response. I extracted this image from DevIQ, Steve Smith Ardalis. I think he came up with the concept a few years ago, and then until at that time that wasn't that popular, but now it's becoming more and more popular. So I'm just like making it as a reference to his blog post. And what like what's fast endpoints, right? Because we have the REPR pattern, but this library comes like hand in hand with the concept. But what it does is that we have ESP.NET minimal APIs that made easy, right? I grabbed this from their website, but what it does really, so it matches up the pattern with the request, with the response. So you can see here that we have this request, we have in here, if I come back, so, right, I think that's better. We have the request, we have in here like the response, and we have an endpoint, right? So, and things get glued together when we have this. So if you look, the request coming here, if you look in here, the response coming here. And it provides like this it connects the request with the response through this endpoint. And on these endpoints, we have controls or easy ways to hook, like, well, what sort of HTTP verb we're going to be accommodating on that API, what sort of authorization we're going to allow, right? So you can see that we have this allow anonymous in here as an example. And you have the method that does like the work for us. So it's very simple, and it sits like on, let's say, on top of minimal APIs, because it makes use of that, but it gives us like a lot of flexibility to expand on top of that. That's the link that's available if you want to explore more. On their website, they have plenty of examples. I picked like a few of them because the ones like I've been more across and I'm more, or I've been exploring a little bit more. So I'm keen to share like my findings. And that's the demo, demo time. And what I want like to show is, let me just come this, right? We're gonna go like in here through like a very quick command line, because if you're coming to create like a solution, right? How you get started? So we basically needed just to create like a new web API and then hook the NuGet package. If I am to come in here and say like .NET, maybe zoom in a little bit more, right? .NET new web. I have like this my uh, example here is just, we're just creating a new web API. And then as soon as we have this one done, so let me go in there. And then we can add the NuGet package. And we can just say, okay, fast endpoints, okay? And as simple as that, we get the web API available, and then we have the NuGet package created and bound to our project. If I am to open this, right, so Visual Studio Code, you're going to see that, well, let me just come zoom a little bit more on this one. But what was created for me was basically this program, and I hooked the FastEndpoints, right, the package in here. I have a like, I'm gonna open this on Visual Studio because I have variations from what I want to demo. But what we don't have in here, we don't have the requests, we don't have the response, we don't have the endpoint. And I'm gonna show in there like what is available and just running to see how it works. So just bear with me. Let me just close that one and come with the Visual Studio. So I have 10 demos, and this is, you're gonna see that it's one of my branches. So I have 10 branches, as you're probably gonna go, we're gonna go through that. And in here is the example, the first example. So where we have that same my request that contains like the first name, last name, and the age, and a response that has like the concatenation of like the first name, last name, and I check if the person is over 18. And this is a glue, like the endpoint. We're combining, well, we're defining our HTTP verb in the URL for that. API user creates. We are authorizing, like we're allowing anyone, just like anonymous users. And here we have the implementation, right? They handle async. I put like another code, another section in here to show that we have other ways of handling the same sort of request. But in general, you're gonna see those examples with the handle async. And what it does is that it's an abstraction that has like a lot of goodies, right? Because if you look in here, I'm just grabbing the request, doing what I need to do, creating the object, and attaching to a response. And that's it. Like, I'm not saying that this is a 200, this is a 400. I'm just saying that this is a response, and the library is going to handle that for me. So if I am to play this one, so I'm gonna put like the breakpoints in here, back again. And you're gonna see that I have this, let me see, I have this request, HTTP. This one I was, well, I was playing before, but if I am to hit this one, which is like a post to my endpoint and passing the JSON. So if I hit that, it hits like my endpoint, and I'm going to just go through it because the example is very simple, but it gives me this 200, right? So this one is I have not assigned. I just like assigned the response to that, and it did a work for me. If I am to come in here, right, and comment that one, and if I uncomment this part on the execute async, what it does is that it gives you more flexibility. So you have like better ways of controlling your objects, even like the way how you return the response to the to the clients, right? To the users that are making those requests. But you can see that's a little bit different. It gives you more power, right? If I am to run this, it's going to be exactly the same. Let me just stop that and replay. But yeah, I think like that's something that you're gonna see most of the examples, that when you have the handle async or the execute async, and both like are very useful, and you have flexibility really to decide what you want to use. So let's hit that, and you have like ways of seeing that, well, that's the object, and we return like the same sort of response, right? That's like just a get started, right? From
And
here, we're
I'm just gonna put this comment from Jamie that he's been using fast endpoints for almost 2 years now and really streamlined our API
yeah,
development. So it's good to see like these comments of people that have experience with it. And
yeah.
Marcel, if you don't mind, I have a couple of questions. So I'm putting myself in the shoes of the viewer that has never seen fast endpoints before. Maybe they're using minimal APIs and they're thinking, well, with minimal APIs in my program CS file, I would typically have these .map method calls. Is
Mhm.
something like that needed with fast endpoints, or does it take care of that mapping for you?
It does take care for us. Yeah. So what happens, what I didn't show in here, like on the program CS, is that, well, there was kind of a coincidence at the same time, like a bug fix, because like what I did is that I created like the solution called like fast endpoints samples. And what happens as part of the library, if you specify like a name of your project with that particular keyword, it doesn't load for you those endpoints. So what you need to do is to do this, well, to get the assembly and bind that as a, like endpoints. So when you say like this .NET map of like endpoints, yeah, you have this sort of way of binding all the endpoints you have in your solution.
Okay, that makes sense. And then one last question for you. I know there's a endpoints explorer window in Visual Studio. Are these endpoints discoverable within that window?
That's
I
a
think
good
it's under.
question. I have not explored, to be
I
honest,
think
with
it's under
fast endpoint.
View, and I think the window's
Let's
stuffed in there
see.
somewhere. This is
Yeah,
something I personally lean on heavily, It's under, I think, under other windows, Endpoints Explorer.
Yeah, Endpoints Explorer. Here we go. Let's see.
Yeah.
So that's a good one.
So it does work. Awesome.
Yeah, it does work. Yeah.
Cool.
Well, nice. Yeah. To be honest, I've been just going through like the requests HTTP, and in general, like I use like other toolings for that as well. But nice, yeah, things that we learn.
I love
Yeah,
that we're always learning something new. Like every show, I learned something. I didn't know. I knew about the endpoints in VS Code, which is like what I use my APIs the most, but very
yeah,
cool.
cool. I've been doing like using like FastEndpoints for more than 1 year now. Yeah, I'm seeing like that. It's pretty like well, it just gives you like the power, and yeah, it's just like minimal APIs on wheels, I would say. Yeah. So
Yeah.
let's
Very
just
nice.
continue on like the example like number 2. And what has changed in here is just, so if I open just like the modules, and now we have like different endpoints, right? So we have like slightly changed things, but if I go in here, we're going to be exploring those typed results, right? So in here, oh, that's the example that we had, but this is the one I want to share. So you're going to see that we have this flexibility. So we are combining the requests with the response, but we have some implementations, well, some sort of, I would say, utilities for us that if you're not passing a request, you can simply like use like endpoints without a request, right? And then you can use a typed result, so that you basically specify, okay, perhaps I can return like an okay response with these objects, maybe are not found or problem details. So we have the power in here in combining those typed results in here, like expecting the results objects or a typed results um, uh, response for us. So what the method is doing is basically grabbing this ID, and then depending on the ID, it's just like hard coded, and I just want to show, okay, if it's 0, it's not found. If it's -1, it returns this problem details. And what's interesting is that what I'm doing, I'm showing, okay, so this is the error that I am specifying. And if you have for any other values, it's just okay, right? So I'm just returning like what's meant to be done. If I am to run this, so you're gonna see that we have like a ways of controlling with those type of results. So if I am to come back in here, the request, and if I like this, I think I put like the breakpoints. If I am to run the get user here, like with user like 0, for example. So that should be not found. If I am just to run this, I'm gonna put in run. So it should hit like this one, not found, and we should have this not found available in here, right? And if I am to run the -1, the -1 is going to be, so let me see here, right? The problem details. So I have like control, so that's gonna hit the problem details, and I'm going to display that back to the user, right? So we have like ways of binding, like in general, like the problem details, that's like the practice that many of us developers are familiar with. In general, with the APIs designs, you want like consistency. So by having, by adopting the problem details and making use of that in your responses when they're not 200, right? That's the way that in general with APIs, that's how we design those APIs to behave. And it shows in here that um, uh, we have ways of using and defining those standards here. If I am to go a little bit deeper because in here that was just we're just getting started. Now we're gonna come to Swagger, right? So that's when things start becoming fun because now we have like a visual way of seeing what our APIs and
Marcel,
what changing.
if you
Yeah,
don't mind, I'm going to ask a question that
yep,
maybe other viewers are wondering the same. And the question here from our friend Stefano is, how does fast endpoints map the URLs to the endpoints? Is there some kind of naming convention I missed? I assume it's convention over configuration, and that's how this is working.
yeah. So in general, you're gonna see that well, you need to, let's say if you have multiple projects, you're gonna be loading them like through similar as in here, like through the assemblies, right? So that's how it identifies the endpoints when you're defining your post, right? So or how it creates. I think like when I launch Swagger, you're gonna visualize how it groups things by default. But that's how you are going to be hooking the endpoints in loading like those URLs, right? So
So when it scans that assembly, is it just looking for classes that derive from endpoint? What you have on line 6 there?
yeah, in here,
Okay,
correct. Yeah,
that makes
yeah,
sense.
that's the glue, right? So when like you're binding to bring the assemblies, it looks like those endpoints behind the scenes, and then it glues them and shows like those endpoints for you.
Perfect.
That's related exactly to to this workarounds. I need to do it. So my example here, but that shows how things are going to be done, especially when you have multiple projects in here, right? So we're just talking about the Swagger, and besides like the projects that we have bound in here, now we have, oops, now we have the, well, we can associate the Swagger documents and the Swagger UI in here. If I am to run it, so now we're going to have a visual representation of our APIs. So let me just bring like this one across. Here we go, right? So we have our APIs in here. So that's like the standard Swagger API definition with like the name, versioning. We have the authorization. That's like how our APIs are being displayed. So that's kind of the vanilla way of how you deal with the APIs in your integration. So in here, we have the Swagger being embedded. Now we're gonna go with Swagger, like let's say on wheels, because in here, yeah, if I am to run the requests and get things in there, yeah, we could. I'm gonna go like on another example on wheels, and then the same like UI experience is available here, but we have like better documentation, right? I'm just changing uh, the branch. So example here like 4. And when we look in here, we can see that there's more to it, right? So it's not simply, I think this one will be aligned more like with commercial APIs because the previous example was just a simple scenario where you're just hooking endpoints. But when you get to document those APIs, that's when you need like better support. And what you see here is that under this request for the endpoint get user, so we have just like as before, we had like the type, the results being either okay or a problem details. And what you can see that we have also a description here that tells consumers, right, that it produce like this user response, problem details. If I want to be more specific with my endpoints or with my results like 404, 500, I'm also like binding to the problem details. They have like this specific implementation produces problem FastEndpoints, FE. I can also override the user or the API tags. So I bring this one rather than to display API. I'm saying, look, this is called like a users tag. I have also ways of showing a better summary, right? And when users open up the API definition, we could get like this summary. What's interesting is that we have the get user in here, and then by associating the summary, you can put like more details of like what your API does, right? And by having like this summary, a description, examples that you want to display, depending on your API, how you're documenting your API. And that's basically having here also consistency, because everything here is a problem details. So I'm just like, rather than throwing a typed result not found, yeah, I'm answering let's say the request with a 404, but showing in a problem details implementation. If I am to show in here as well that my Swagger now has, well, it's because it's being documented, I have included a little more details in here, because I'm doing like anonymous requests. I'm just decided to disable the authorization button. Also have like in here the users, the name, the title, and the version. And I'm saying that, look, I want to use the problem details. What I did in here for this handler is for handling the 500 using problem details as well. This is not, well, this is just like a .NET, ASP.NET middleware. But this one, I need to do it because with 500s, you don't get that sort of, by default, right? You don't get that sort of handling. And if you want to do that, like the problem details, this is an implementation using the exception, the global exception middleware. So you can see the problem details, 500, and I'm just displaying like what would be captured during the exception. If I am to run this, right? So oops, this one, and let's go like through the Swagger, and then we can just view what's available and trigger um, our endpoints. Swagger, right? So if you can see here that now things are reflected on my API definition with the version. You can see that this group is showing that I'm overriding the group of my APIs. You can see that like in here, the summary, it's only be applied to this one. But what's nice is that you can see what it does. Like get user by ID, that's the summary coming here as well, right? That like the endpoint retrieves a user by this unique identifier. It returns the full name, user's full name, and whether like the user is over 18 years old. And then I can trigger in here, right? But if you go down a little bit more, you're gonna see that these are like the 200, the 400 has a problem details definition, same for 404, same for 500. Although like this one displays 400 during the execution time, that one is going to display like with the proper uh, uh, response number here. If I am to run, so let me execute that. So I'm just capturing the user ID. And then because this one is 0, it's going to go to the return problem and return not found problem details. So if I am to jump in there, you're going to see that this one is being just handled with the problem details. So 404 in here, right? So you can see that. And if I am to run like of the -1, I can just come back to my Swagger. So just bear with me, because this one got just hidden. And if I am to come, like for example, with a -1, execute, and then that we're gonna get in here the the standard one that says that the user has to be greater than 0. So it's very simple. And I made my APIs consistent. And I have like, so 400 here. I put like this one as a throw exception. So you can explore later and check like, okay, with the 500, you should get the same problem details experience, right? So that's like a very um, simple now that you have like a better understanding, and you can explore that by just grabbing the source codes and exploring yourself. Another example I want to show is this one. So we're going to go we're going uh, deeper and deeper in here. And we have the Swagger client downloads. So what happens is that when you have clients, best practice these days is just leveraging client generators, because with this API definition, with the Swagger, you can take like the JSON, and then from this JSON, you can generate your clients. Or like, for example, by leveraging, if you have a web app, you could generate a TypeScript endpoints. If I'm doing .NET, I could generate a C# um, endpoints. So everything comes like, it generates those endpoints for us, the mapping, and then you can consume in our client's applications. Let me jump to, for this one, I have brought Visual Studio Code just because I have more, another project in here, and I didn't want to close Visual Studio, but I'm bringing Visual Studio Code. On this one is the example 5, where we're bringing the Swagger client downloads in here. And what I want to show is that if I am to open this, right? So that's the project. And you're going to see that we have this package, right? So that's the Kyoto, the Microsoft client generator. So it's one it's becoming, well, I think like I've been exploring that. I'm excited for like FastEndpoints to be onboarding that as part of, as being like the core client generator. So I just bring in this NuGet package, and then I can generate my clients from there. So the way how it works is that in here, right? So I'm coming to my program CS, and I have included like only for my developer well, instance, right? So if I am coming to my developer, or my local develop experience, I'm saying that, look, this is my endpoint. It's called CS client. But what I'm doing is basically leveraging in here, like this client, which is I'm generating like a C# client. It's gonna take like my APIs, generate with this particular namespace, the client, the client class name, which is kind of like the how like things are gonna be wrapped up. And but as soon as I hit that, then I have my endpoints, and I can basically, this is what like you guys gonna see it, but I'm gonna run this, and you're gonna see that we are going to get this uh, kind of a zip available for us to download, and then we can manipulate that. So if I am to run this, I think I had this one. Yeah, that's the FastEndpoints. Let's see. I'm gonna launch that, and then we are gonna see the endpoints, right, visually. And what's nice is that if you're coming for the first time, you're only gonna do this once, really, because as soon as you get the um, the downloadable, then you have already your client, and then from there you can just use your applications. But you can also expose that to consumers, right? If you want to share like those the client generation for them. In general, to be honest, this is not something that you get to do it for consumers, but you have this ability to make it available. if you want to. For me, I'm using as a developer experience. So if I am to execute that, you can see that I have this downloadable file. And this is going to be a zip. As I download that, well, I'm not gonna open up, I could, but we're gonna see that it's downloading here, right? So that's a zip file. And with that, within the zip itself, I brought like on Visual Studio Code. That's basically this. And the only thing I did is that I wrapped up onto a project. And in here, I think this one is just the folder. Now this one, the only thing I did really was the program CS, because this wasn't there, but I had my user clients. You can see that this one is auto-generated, right? Then we have like the plumbing for us, even like the modules, the users, the endpoints. So you have these sort of builders that are created for you, the models as well. All of this was just created by Kyoto. And what I did was just to hook to that and create a program CS that would reflect like my experience in here. So if I am to come, oh, this is still running, which is good. So 5270, which is this one, that's great. So if I am to debug that, so you can see like the breakpoint, and then we should basically be querying the API, right? The endpoint API that was created. And that's it. That we're basically in. We have this, well, we're leveraging anonymous authentication provider. We're getting to set up like the request adapter. We have this, now we're coming to the client, which is called like the user's client. Because this is like user request ID 0. If you remember 0, it's going to give us a not found. And then we can, I'm just hooking here the URL. Let's see the request. As I execute, we should expect an exception, right? So that was captured because that's a problem details definition for 404. What's nice is that we're gonna see here like the right line. Let me go a little bit. Cool, like so you can see 404, the definition, and the error that's coming out of that. So I'm just going like F10 in here, and yeah, so that's how things are being generated. If I am to run all the way, that's it. So we had this client generator available for us, and now made the use of that, and all baked in within FastEndpoints. Let me close that. We're gonna come back to our Visual Studio, and we're gonna go to the next example with validations, right? Another nice thing is that, well, fluent validations, right? So if you're familiar, if you're more like have been exploring .NET for some time, that's a very popular library. And FastEndpoints use that um, by default, right? So I don't need to pull any other packages. Just with the regular NuGet package, I have that baked in for me. And you can see here, like for example, the create user, user request, user response. I have like another one. Well, the get user has the user ID request and user response. But if I am to jump to the modules, you're gonna see that now we have this validator, and this one is coming from Fluent validation, right? And you can see that there is a rule where, like the rule for the user ID that must be greater than 0, and that's what it says in here, greater than 0, right? But we have ways of validating the different properties in here that, well, if things are, if we're receiving a request that doesn't match your specification and what your code expects, with Fluent validations, you can simply hook like some messages in handling based on rules that you have, right? So I had here my user ID request, user request, if I am to come and say, I think I had like this example with the create, right? So I'm basically saying that, well, the first name is just one character. This is under than 18. And if I am to run this, I should get a message. So this is for create user. Let me just run that. And this is pretty cool. So I didn't do much, just hook that. All right, it's running. Let me just stop the other one. Just bear with me. I need to stop that. Cool, that's close. Let's go back. So I had this error because my previous example was still running. So now I got the endpoints. I don't have the Swagger definition available, but I can hit this with my send request in here. So if I am to hit it, well, I didn't. So what happens is that happened before that even hit my endpoint. So before that happened, I had my validation. And you can see that the first name is too short. You must be 18 years old to register in this example. So this one just happened, but it didn't even hit my endpoint. In here, let's see, that was the create user, right? So that one didn't get hit at all. If I am now to fix this, I join, let's say 18, and now I can send the request. Oops, didn't do it. I think I didn't save. That's why. Play it again, and that's launched. So if I hit this one now, am I missing something here? I think I am. Join Smith, get user. Oh, sorry, user request. First name, minimum length, greater than 18. First user request. User request. I think like, yeah, what I'm missing here. First name, John Smith. Could have worked. So 72. Well, maybe it's my logic that's not there because it's saying that. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, yeah, that's I think like as part of the rules, I wasn't that specific. Maybe a greater than, not greater than or equal. That's my that was me. But yeah, you can see that it's greater than, not greater or equal. And so that is just hitting now, right? So I have passed the validation that these ones consider are equal, but on my previous one it wasn't there. But okay, yeah, it just took like some time because I was debugging. And but you have like this baked in, and you have like fluent validations available for us. Let me just close things in here because I think that let me close that because it's too much. And we have the get user. The other thing in here, we have ways of controlling the flow. If I don't want things to be erased, right, straight away, as it happened before, I could say, oh, look, don't throw this if validation fails. And then I can handle that on my code. I can say that, okay, if the user ID is 0, then add the 0. So this one is for the get user, right? And then I can, in the end, show that like, I want to throw like the errors. So let me bring like the get user. So this should be launched, get user 0 in here, right? And because like my endpoint, as you remember, the user ID request must be greater than 0. That wasn't hit because I put it this clause in here. And now I'm controlling, right? That, oh, I want to bind this error. And now I want this to be raised, right? And then I getting like the error if I am to reply. I think let me just go very quickly, then you can see it, just because it times out. Cool, right? So you can see that I am controlling. I had like my previous validation that came as well, this one. And my second validation, that the one I created, right? The user has to be greater than 0. So you have like ways of controlling that. And that's gives you like power to decide whether you want to go with the off the shelf or if you want to customize that. Let's go to another example with mappers, right? And with mappers, I don't want to bring any sort of the changes. With mappers, well, if you're familiar with those mapping sort of libraries, we have, well, in here
I
we
don't
also
think you
have,
changed, yeah, the branch.
it didn't.
Yeah, because you were
Sorry.
like, yeah.
Good. That's good. Thanks, Mara, for pinpointing that. But yeah, so with the mapper, if you're familiar with those mapping tools, or we have, there's this available like on FastEndpoints. So if I am to bring this, let's say, I think there was in here, right? It's interesting that we can see on the endpoints, we have the request, right? We have the response, and we have in here like the user mapper. And so it's another uh, extension of like the endpoint, allows us to bind this user mapper. If I am to jump in here, the user mapper, what I have is just like this mapper uh, uh, abstraction here, like implementation that tells me that, okay, I can convert things. It does like the mapping, request, response, and the entity. So from this request, I'm translating to a user. From this entity, I'm translating into a response. And if I am to run this, you're going to see that. So that's the create user. Let me bring that code that's launched. Create user this, right? So I'm having here just like translation. So I could just take the request that contains what I've submitted. I'm converting to the entity. And I'm doing just like a way, if you have like any sort of processing or rules in your codes, you would be just handling that this way, right? So you have like this baked in as well, and which is pretty good because it gives you like more power if you decide to leverage those mapping tools, right? So which is cool, and that's like another one you can just tick because the implementation or the library does that for us. Now we're getting to example number 8, processors. In here, what's nice is that we have ways of uh, intervening before executions happen, right? So if you need to do something, or something needs to occur before your endpoint gets hit, you can do that with preprocessors. Or if something it needs to happen after your endpoint gets hit, you have post processor, and you have like ways of gluing them together. I would like just do like something visual because in general we see better and understand like when we see how it works. So we have like this sort of preprocessor, and then you have this as your endpoint. So you could see that, okay, that's your endpoint. And then we could have something like the post processor, right? And what's nice, because like in here, it would be like a flow that it would happen as you define. Maybe you want to do some sort of logging. You could do that. But what if you need transition states? It has like you have the ability of doing this with a state. So what that means is that you could say that, okay, look, I'm stamping this value. I want this to be shared in all parts of the execution. So my endpoint could make use of that. My post processor could make use of that. So we have this available within the library. And when you look at that, and you can see here that I have my preprocessor and my post processor. If I am to jump under this checker, what it does is that we have the preprocessor in here, takes the user request in a state, and I'm just running like a simple validation that if the context, if the request contains the age, and age is greater or equal than 18, I'm setting the state to be true. There's also like a state in here that shows the duration. And just because if I am to go my state bag, you can see that I have a stopwatcher. So this is going to continue run as my state is transitioned. And here my post processor, what I have is I'm just logging the duration here, right? So if I am to run this, which is the create user, let me just run that. One thing that I didn't show, so that once it's launched, what I didn't show was the program CS, right? This one is interesting because I can create preprocessors or like something that happens even before my regular preprocessor. So let's say that this is my global preprocessor, right? So maybe you have like a particular rule that's okay. You have like a tenant ID, or as part of the request, you have a header or something that you want to validate. And this is going to be triggered in every single request before the preprocessors occur, okay, are triggered. So let's like create the user here, and you're gonna see. So create a user. So this one should be hit. Yeah, it did. It was. So that was my first global preprocessor that was hit, and this one is basically going to be validated. For the about like this demo is that it's gonna fail, right? I just want like if I was that was my gate, that was it. I would just hit that, and things would just be returned that with this error message. That's a validation failure. I want to skip that because I want to show the preprocessor, right? So I want just to continue that. And now it came to my preprocessor. We had the global, now I have the specific one. And what I'm doing here is that the state of is going to be true, was false, and this is the duration of like my stopwatcher here. And that's my on the endpoints. I'm grabbing this sort of state, right? I'm grabbing here, so this is incrementing, and this is my state in here that's the age is true. So I'm using that. I think this one is because I have passed the time, but anyways, this one is my post processor that's going to be hit, so it is still incrementing. And we have like the whole like way of like handling before, executing, and handling afterwards. That's like can be powerful in depending on your use case. You you can have like lots like in here like to explore. And let's go to I think this one, yeah, it's my second last. And this we're going to be exploring the event bus, right? That's an implementation within the tooling. And what it does is that you have this concept of pub and sub, right? So if I'm familiar with that, so we have one publisher with multiple subscribers, right? So this one, if I put it sub one. So what it does is that we can trigger this from one single um, emitter, let's say, and from this publisher, and then we can hit multiple subscribers, right? That's like the concept that we have in here. And if I am to run that, let's see, this one, yeah. I put Swagger, which is greater. Uh, it's just because it makes my life easier. So let me just play this one. And then from the UI, I'm gonna have a way of creating the user, right? So there's, and if I come in here, I'm gonna create the user. I'm gonna put my example, John Smith. Let's say like 30. Let's execute that. And in here on my publish, I have an event and I have subscribers. Where's my subscriber? Oh, sorry, this my handler. One thing I didn't do it, but I think that would be cool to do it. Let me stop that. This is like a single handler. Let's put this one. Let's say handler two, and that's my other subscriber. But what it does is just grabbing the events and stamping the name in here. Let's run that. So now I have two subscribers. And let's run that. Swagger. Cool. Let's run this. Okay. John. And then you're going to see this one happening. Cool. Publishing. Hitting the first endpoint, hitting the second endpoint. All right. Voila. So that's like was an example that we had it. In my last example is that we have, let me just undo this because I don't want to transition, is the command. The command bus, what it does is that similar with the, well, it's just like the commands in the execution, right? Your commands, your handler. We have ways of doing um, basically a chain of commands, right? So I can have loggers, for example. This is commented out, right? If I run this, as soon as I run, I think you're gonna identify or visualize how it works. So all my commands in here, what I have is just a handler that takes first name, last name, and returns a string, right? So that's my string, and combines and concatenates that. So if I am to see the create user, this one has my handler, and it should hit these endpoints, the command for me. Just looking, that's the final example. Let me come. I think this one I have the Swagger. Yeah. And then create user. Let's put like this one. John Smith, okay, cool. That one, execute. So this one is going to trigger my commands. That's going to be combining the user first name, last name, and we're getting the response, right? So that was the commands handler, but we have this extra one in here, just um, cherry on top of cake, where, for example, I can do like a chain of commands, right? If you know the chain pattern, command pattern is that we can uh, have like executions happening in a sort of a sequence. What I want to do in here is that the command logger and result logger, they're very similar. What they are doing, they're just stamping a message to the log. But in general, you see on pipelines, right? That's a typical behavior of a pipeline. They call like the command middleware. If I am to run that, you're going to see that from the program, it's going to hit our endpoint. Then the endpoint is going to trigger the commands, but it's going to hit our pipeline. It's going to come to the commands, then to the result logger, to then our commands. So let me just bring the Swagger. So final one. Cool. And running this, let's put like the same sort of name. I'm gonna hit that one. It's gonna come in here to my endpoint to then come to my command logger, first step, to then go to my result logger, to then come to my command. Right? So we have this chain in here defined. And if I am to come back, it's going to come back, right? So from it's kind of coming back and even to my endpoint. And that's like how we could do like this chain of commands in here, which is like one of these other like features that we have available within FastEndpoints. Yeah, I think we put like 10 examples. I think this is only hitting maybe 30% what the library can do. It can do it even more than that. But it's just a hint for you that's checking like the session to explore, right? Because you have much more power on this library. Yeah.
All right, that was great, Marcel. You finished in time. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I think we got to most of the questions. Unfortunately, we're out of time for today, but I want to thank our viewers for tuning in once again. As a reminder, today's stream was recorded, and you can find that over at dot.net/live. If you join us next week, same day of the week, same time, we'll actually have familiar co-host join the show, Cam Soper, and he'll talk to us about infrastructure as code with Pulumi. Hope to see everyone then. Thank you.